Please, marry me." The words cut through Main Street like a gunshot. Every head turned. Every conversation died. Because the woman standing in the dust wasn't asking just anyone. She was begging Cole Hawkins, the man who once killed 3 men in a single night. The cowboy every soul in Redwood Valley feared to even look at wrong. Her dress was covered in trail dust. Her hands were shaking. But her eyes? They burned with something more powerful than fear. Desperation. And Cole Hawkins, sitting stone still on his black horse, stared down at her like she'd just asked him to dig his own grave. If you want to see how this impossible moment changes everything, subscribe to our channel and stay with this story until the very end. Comment below with the city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now let's see what happens when the most feared man in the West meets the woman brave enough to beg him for mercy. The horse shifted beneath Cole, but he didn't move, didn't blink, just stared down at the woman blocking his path like she'd lost her mind. Maybe she had. "Please," she said again, louder this time. Her voice cracked but didn't break. "I need you to marry me." Someone gasped from the boardwalk. Mrs. Henderson, probably. That woman gasped at everything. Cole's jaw tightened. His hands, scarred, rough, the kind of hands that had done things good men didn't talk about, gripped the reins a little harder. "Get out of the way," he said. His voice was low, flat, the kind of voice that didn't ask twice. But she didn't move. "I can't," she whispered. Behind her, the town watched like they were witnessing a public execution. The blacksmith stood frozen mid-swing. The shopkeeper's wife clutched her basket so tight her knuckles went white. Even the dogs seemed to sense something dangerous was happening. Cole leaned forward in the saddle. "You drunk?" "No." "Crazy?" "Maybe," she swallowed hard. "But I'm also out of options." He studied her face. Young. Too young to have that kind of exhaustion carved into her features. Her dress was quality once, but now it was stained with God knows what. Her hair had come loose from its pins and hung in tangled waves around her shoulders. She looked like she'd been traveling for weeks. She looked like she'd been running. "I don't know you," Cole said. "I know." Her voice steadied, just a fraction. "But I know who you are. Everyone does." "Then you know I'm not the marrying kind." "I know you're the kind of man who doesn't ask questions." She took a small step closer to the horse, and Cole's hand moved instinctively toward his hip before he stopped himself. "I know you live alone. I know you don't care what this town thinks. And I know," her voice dropped to barely above a whisper, "I know you're the only person in 3 counties who might say yes." Silence. The kind of silence that hurt to stand in. Then Sheriff Garrett pushed through the crowd, his badge catching the afternoon sun. "Miss, I'm going to need you to step away from Mr. Hawkins." She didn't even look at him. Her eyes stayed locked on Cole's. "Please," she said one more time. "I'll work. I'll earn my keep. I won't ask for anything else. Just give me somewhere to go before dark." "That's enough." Garrett put a hand on her arm, and she flinched so hard she nearly fell. Cole saw it. The fear. Not of him, of something else. Someone else. "Sheriff!" Cole's voice cut through the tension like a knife. "Let her go." Garrett froze. "Cole, this woman is clearly disturbed. I said let her go." The sheriff's hand dropped. Cole looked down at the woman again. Really looked at her this time. The way she held herself despite the trembling. The way her chin stayed up even though tears were building in her eyes. The way she stood there in front of the whole damn town and asked for the one thing she shouldn't have to beg for. Help. "What's your name?" he asked. "Amelia." She said it like it was the last thing she owned. "Amelia Carter." "Where'd you come from, Miss Carter?" "Philadelphia." She wiped her cheek quickly. "I came here to get married." A few people in the crowd murmured. Cole ignored them. "So where's your husband?" Her face hardened. "Gone, with every dollar I brought." She straightened her shoulders. "He told me to wait at the hotel. Said he'd be back by morning. That was 3 days ago. The hotel owner says if I don't pay by tonight, he's calling the law on me for fraud." Sheriff Garrett cleared his throat. "Now, Miss Carter, I'm sure we can sort this out in a civilized—" "Can you?" She rounded on him, and the fire in her voice made half the crowd take a step back. "Can you get my money back? Can you make a man who doesn't exist anymore pay for what he stole? Can you—" Her voice broke. "Can you give me anywhere to go that isn't back to the family who told me I was a burden?" The sheriff had nothing to say to that. Nobody did. Cole dismounted. The movement was slow, deliberate. He stood a good 6 inches taller than Amelia, and when he looked down at her, she had to tilt her head back just to meet his eyes. "You know what people say about me?" he asked quietly. "Yes." "And you're still asking?" "I don't have a choice." He studied her for a long moment. Then he turned to the sheriff. "She didn't commit any crime, did she?" "Well, no, but—" "Then she's free to go where she pleases." Cole looked back at Amelia. "You can ride?" She nodded quickly. "I grew up on a farm." "Then get on the horse." The entire street erupted. "Cole, you can't be serious." "Mister Hawkins, this is highly irregular. Someone needs to talk sense into that man." But Cole wasn't listening. He was already pulling himself back into the saddle. He held out his hand to Amelia, and after only a second's hesitation, she took it. Her hand was smaller than he expected, softer. He pulled her up behind him in one smooth motion, and she wrapped her arms around his waist to keep from falling. She was shaking. He could feel it through his coat. "Hold tight," he said. Then he kicked the horse into motion, and they left Redwood Valley in a cloud of dust and shocked silence. They rode for 20 minutes before Cole spoke again. "You can let go now." Amelia realized she was still gripping his coat like her life depended on it. She loosened her hold, but didn't let go completely. The trail was rocky, and she wasn't confident enough in her balance to risk it. "Where are we going?" she asked. "My ranch." "How far?" "Another hour." She fell silent again. The landscape around them was beautiful in a harsh kind of way. All red rocks and twisted pine trees and mountains that looked close enough to touch, but never seemed to get any nearer. It reminded her of everything she'd left behind in Philadelphia. The certainty, the safety, the life she'd thrown away because she'd been stupid enough to believe a stranger's promises. "What was his name?" Cole asked suddenly. "What?" "The man who stole from you. What was his name?" Amelia swallowed. "Thomas Brennan. At least, that's what he told me." "Describe him." "Tall, brown hair, brown eyes, had a scar on his left hand, said he got it working cattle." She paused. "Why?" "Because if he shows up in Redwood Valley again, I want to know who to shoot." She couldn't tell if he was joking. His voice gave nothing away. "You don't have to do that," she said quietly. "Didn't say I would. Said I wanted to." "Why?" "Because men who steal from women are cowards." His voice was flat, matter of fact. "And cowards should know better than to come back." Something in her chest loosened just a little. Not much, but enough. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me yet. You haven't seen where you're staying." The ranch appeared at sunset like something out of a dream, or maybe a warning. It sat in a valley between two ridges, surrounded by open grazing land that stretched all the way to the tree line. The house itself was small, just one story, built from rough-hewn logs and stone. But it looked solid, permanent. There was a barn, a corral, and what looked like a chicken coop in the back. It was also completely isolated. The nearest neighbor, Cole explained as they rode up, was 8 miles away. "You live out here alone?" Amelia asked. "That's the point." He dismounted and held up a hand to help her down. Her legs nearly gave out when her feet hit the ground. Hours on horseback after days of walking had left her body screaming, but she forced herself to stand straight. Cole led the horse into the barn without a word, leaving her standing in the yard. Amelia looked around slowly. The sun was sinking fast, painting everything in shades of gold and orange. In the distance, she could hear cows lowing. A hawk circled overhead. It was beautiful. It was also terrifying, because she was alone with a man she didn't know, in a place no one could hear her scream. And she'd put herself there willingly. What have I done? "You coming inside, or you planning to sleep out here?" Cole's voice made her jump. He was standing in the doorway of the house, silhouetted against the lamplight inside. Amelia took a breath and walked toward him. The inside of the house was not what she expected. Clean, sparse. A stone fireplace dominated one wall. A table and 2 chairs sat near the window. There was a small kitchen area with a wood stove, a sink with a hand pump, and shelves lined with canned goods. One door led to what had to be the bedroom. That was it. "You can have the bed," Cole said, already moving toward a trunk in the corner. "I'll sleep out here." "I can't." "Yes, you can." He pulled out a blanket and tossed it onto the sofa, a worn piece of furniture that looked like it had seen better decades. "I don't sleep much anyway." Amelia stood in the middle of the room, suddenly aware of how small the space was, how close they'd be, how vulnerable she was. "I meant what I said," she said quickly. "About working. We'll talk about it in the morning." Cole moved toward the door. "There's water in the pump. Help yourself to whatever's in the pantry. And bolt this door after I leave." "Wait, you're going back out?" "Horses need tending. Won't take long." He paused at the threshold. "But that bolt? Use it. Don't open this door for anyone but me." "How will I know it's you?" "Because anyone else who shows up here won't knock." Then he was gone. Amelia stood frozen for a full minute before she moved to the door and slid the heavy iron bolt into place. Then she sank down onto the nearest chair and finally, let herself cry. She woke to the smell of coffee. For a moment, Amelia didn't know where she was. Then it all came rushing back. The street, the horse, the ranch, the bolt she'd locked, and then unlocked sometime before dawn when exhaustion had finally knocked her unconscious. She sat up quickly, her heart racing. Cole was at the stove, his back to her. He didn't turn around. "There's a basin in the bedroom," he said. "Water's still warm if you want to wash up." Amelia stood slowly, her body protesting every movement. "What time is it?" "Near 7. "You let me sleep?" "You needed it." He poured coffee into 2 tin cups. "You'll need your strength today." "Why?" He turned finally and held out one of the cups. His face was unreadable. "Because if you're going to stay here, you're going to work. And on a ranch, work starts at dawn." She took the coffee. It was strong enough to strip paint. "I told you I'd work." "Saying it and doing it are different things." "Try me." Something flickered in his eyes. Not quite amusement, but close. "Finish your coffee, then meet me in the barn." He left before she could respond. Amelia drank the coffee, black, bitter, perfect, and then went to the bedroom to splash water on her face. She caught sight of herself in the small mirror above the basin, and barely recognized the woman staring back. Her hair was a disaster. Her dress was ruined. She had dark circles under her eyes that made her look 10 years older. But she was alive, and she had somewhere to be. That was more than she'd had yesterday. The barn was bigger than it looked from outside. 6 stalls, though only 3 held horses. The rest of the space was taken up by equipment, hay bales, and what looked like enough tools to build a second house. Cole was already working, mucking out one of the stalls with efficient, practiced movements. "Grab a shovel," he said without looking up. Amelia found one hanging on the wall and moved to the next stall. The horse inside, a massive bay with a white star on its forehead, eyed her suspiciously. "His name's Thunder," Cole said. "He bites." "Good to know." "I'm serious. He's taken chunks out of 3 different ranch hands." "Then why do you keep him?" "Because he's faster than anything else in the valley when it matters." Amelia studied the horse. Thunder snorted and pawed at the ground, clearly unimpressed with her presence. "Can I touch him?" she asked. "If you want to lose a finger." She ignored him and slowly extended her hand toward Thunder's nose. The horse's ears flattened. "Miss Carter." "Shh." Amelia kept her hand steady, her voice low. "It's all right. I'm not going to hurt you." Thunder's nostrils flared. He took 1 step closer, then another, and then his nose bumped against her palm. Cole stopped working and stared. Amelia smiled, the first real smile she'd worn in days, and stroked Thunder's nose gently. "There's a good boy. You're not so scary, are you?" "That's impossible," Cole said flatly. "What?" "That horse hates everyone." "Maybe he just needed someone who wasn't afraid of him." She looked at Cole over Thunder's head. "Sound familiar?" For the first time since she'd met him, Cole Hawkins almost smiled. Almost. "Get to work," he said instead, but his voice had lost its edge. By noon, Amelia's hands were covered in blisters. By 3, her back was screaming. By sunset, she could barely stand. But she didn't complain. Not once. Cole watched her out of the corner of his eye as they worked through the list of chores. Feeding the horses, repairing a section of fence, hauling water from the creek, chopping wood for the stove. She fell twice, dropped things 3 times, nearly got kicked by Thunder's stablemate. But every time she stumbled, she got back up. Every time she failed, she tried again. "That's enough," Cole finally said, as the last light faded from the sky. "Go inside. I'll finish up." "I can help." "You can barely walk." He took the bucket from her hands. "Go." She wanted to argue. He could see it in her face. But her body won the fight, and she turned toward the house without another word. Cole waited until she was inside before he let out a long breath. What the hell was he doing? He'd spent 5 years building a life where no one bothered him, where no one asked him for anything, where no one looked at him like he was anything other than the monster they'd turned him into. And now there was a woman in his house who'd looked him straight in the eye and asked him for help. Not because she was stupid, because she was desperate enough to be brave. And God help him, he couldn't turn that away. When Cole came inside an hour later, Amelia was asleep at the table. Her head was pillowed on her arms, her breathing deep and even. There was a half-eaten plate of beans next to her. She'd tried to wait up for him, apparently, and lost the battle. Cole stood in the doorway for a long moment, just looking at her. She was trouble. He knew that. Women always were. But she was also something else. Something he couldn't quite name. He moved quietly across the room and lifted her as gently as he could. She stirred, but didn't wake, just mumbled something incoherent and curled against his chest. She weighed nothing. Felt like he could break her with one wrong move. He carried her to the bedroom and laid her on the bed, pulling the blanket over her. She sighed in her sleep and turned onto her side, her face finally peaceful. Cole backed out of the room and closed the door. Then he sat on the sofa, poured himself a drink he didn't want, and stared at the fire until the sun came up. The pattern repeated itself for 3 days, dawn to dusk, work, silence, sleep. Amelia learned the rhythm of ranch life faster than Cole expected. She figured out which animals needed gentle handling and which needed a firm hand. She learned to start the wood stove without burning herself. She even managed to patch a section of the corral fence without him having to redo it. She also learned that Cole Hawkins wasn't a man who talked. He gave orders. He corrected mistakes. He occasionally nodded when she did something right. But he didn't talk. Not about where he came from. Not about the stories people told. Not about why a man who clearly knew how to run a ranch was living alone in the middle of nowhere. On the 4th day, Amelia decided to push. They were in the barn again, always the barn, feeding the horses when she finally spoke. "Can I ask you something?" "No." "Why did you say yes?" Cole didn't look up from the feed bucket. "I didn't say yes." "You brought me here." "That's not the same thing." "Then what is it?" He sighed and turned to face her. "It's me giving you a place to stay until you figure out what's next." "And then?" "And then you leave." His voice was flat. "That's how this works, Miss Carter. You stay until you can support yourself. Then you go." "What if I don't want to leave?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Cole's eyes narrowed. "Everyone leaves, eventually." "Not everyone. In my experience, everyone." He turned back to his work. "Don't make this into something it's not." Amelia felt something hot and angry rise in her chest. "I'm not trying to make it into anything. I'm trying to understand why you'd help someone you don't know, if you're just going to throw them out the second it's convenient." "Because maybe I'm tired of being the man everyone's afraid of." The words exploded out of him before he could stop them. "Maybe just once I wanted to be the person someone asked for help, instead of the person everyone runs from. Is that what you want to hear?" Silence. Cole's hands were shaking. He gripped the edge of the stall door to steady them. Amelia took a step closer. "Yes," she said quietly. "That's exactly what I wanted to hear." He looked at her finally, really looked at her. And for the first time, he saw someone who wasn't afraid. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said. "I know." "You don't know that." "Yes, I do." She moved closer still, until there was barely a foot between them. "Because if you were the man they say you are, I'd be dead already. Or worse. But I'm not. I'm standing here arguing with you about whether or not I'm allowed to care if you kick me out." "You shouldn't care." "Too late." Cole stared at her, at this impossible woman who'd walked into his life 4 days ago and somehow managed to crack something open inside him that he'd thought was sealed shut for good. "This is a mistake," he said. "Probably," she smiled slightly. "But I've already made about 100 of those. What's one more?" He should have walked away, should have ended the conversation right there. Instead, he heard himself say, "Fine." "Fine what?" "Fine, you can stay." He ran a hand over his face. "But we're doing this my way." "Which is?" "You work. You keep to yourself. And if anyone from town comes asking questions, you tell them we're married." Amelia blinked. "What?" "You heard me." Cole's voice was firm now, decided. "If word gets out that I've got a woman living here with no ring on her finger, Every gossip from here to Denver will make your life hell. So if anyone asks, we got married quiet-like. No ceremony, no fuss, just a practical arrangement between two people who needed something from each other.
You want me to lie to the whole town? I want you to have a life that doesn't involve dodging accusations of impropriety every time you show your face in public. He crossed his arms. Unless you've got a better idea. She didn't, and they both knew it. All right, she said finally. We're married. In name only. In name only, Cole agreed. And when you leave, we'll say it didn't work out. Simple as that. Amelia nodded slowly. It wasn't what she'd imagined when she'd stepped in front of his horse 5 days ago. But then again, nothing about this situation was what she'd imagined. One more thing, she said. What? If we're going to pretend to be married, you should probably call me Amelia. Miss Carter makes it sound like you hired a governess. Cole's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but something close. Amelia, he repeated, testing it out. She liked the way he said it, low and careful, like the word itself might break.
And I'll call you Cole, she said, unless you'd prefer Mr. Hawkins?
God, no, he shook his head. Cole's fine. Good. She held out her hand. Then I guess we have a deal. He looked at her hand for a long moment. Then he took it. His grip was firm, warm. The calluses on his palm matched the ones forming on hers. It felt like a promise, or maybe a warning. Either way, Amelia Carter, now Amelia Hawkins in the eyes of anyone who asked, squeezed back and decided she'd figure out the difference later. The first person to find out about their marriage was Sheriff Garrett, and he didn't take it well. He showed up at the ranch 3 days after the handshake, riding hard enough to kick up dust that could be seen for miles. Amelia was in the garden, if you could call the patch of dirt behind the house a garden, trying to coax life out of soil that looked like it hadn't seen water in years. She heard the horse before she saw it. Then she heard Cole's voice, sharp and cold.
You're on private property, Sheriff. Need to talk to you, Cole.
Garrett dismounted, his hand resting on his gun belt. Not threatening, just present. Heard some interesting news in town. Then you've wasted a trip. I don't care what they're saying. They're saying you got married. Silence. Amelia's hands stilled in the dirt. That's right, Cole said finally. To the woman who stopped you in the street? The one who was begging strangers for help? Garrett's voice rose. Cole, you don't even know her. I know enough. Do you? Because I did some asking around. Sent a telegraph to Philadelphia. There's no record of an Amelia Carter anywhere in the city registry. No family. No employment history. Nothing. Amelia's heart stopped. She stood slowly, brushing dirt from her hands, and walked around the side of the house. Both men turned to look at her. That's because Carter isn't my real name, she said quietly. Cole's eyes narrowed.
What? It's my mother's maiden name. I used it when I left Philadelphia because my father told me if I ever contacted the family again, he'd have me arrested for theft. She lifted her chin. He claimed I stole jewelry that belonged to my mother. I didn't. But he's a federal judge, and I'm nobody. So who do you think they'd believe? Garrett's hand moved closer to his gun. So you're a fugitive? I'm a woman who left a bad situation. Her voice didn't shake. If that makes me a criminal in your eyes, Sheriff, then I guess you'd better arrest me. But you should know, I won't go quietly. Nobody's arresting anyone. Cole stepped between them, his body a wall. She's my wife now. That makes her my responsibility, not yours. Your wife? Garrett's laugh was bitter. You married her without knowing her real name? I married her because she needed help, and I had room to spare. Cole's voice dropped dangerously low. And unless you've got a warrant, Sheriff, You need to leave. Now. Garrett stared at both of them for a long moment. Then he shook his head. You're making a mistake, Cole. Wouldn't be my first. The sheriff mounted his horse and rode away without another word. But the look he gave Amelia before he left said everything. This isn't over. Cole waited until Garrett was out of sight before turning to her. What's your real name? Amelia Rothschild. She wrapped her arms around herself. My father is Judge Harold Rothschild. My mother died when I was 15. He remarried 6 months later, and his new wife made it very clear I wasn't welcome. She paused. When I turned 23, I asked for my inheritance, the money my mother left me. He said I'd already spent it. I hadn't touched a penny. So I took my mother's pearl necklace, the only thing I had left of her, and I sold it. Used the money to pay the mail-order bride agency and buy a train ticket west. And the jewelry he accused you of stealing? Was my mother's necklace. Her voice hardened. He wanted it back so he could give it to his new wife. When I refused, he threatened to ruin me. So I ran. Cole was quiet for a long time. Then he said, You should have told me. Would it have changed anything? No. He looked at her steadily. But lies have a way of catching up to people. And when they do, they usually bring company. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Just don't lie to me again. He turned back toward the barn. Real name or fake, you're still Amelia Hawkins now. That means something. She watched him walk away, his shoulders stiff with anger he was too controlled to show. Cole? She called out. He stopped but didn't turn around. Thank you. For standing between me and the sheriff. That's what husbands do, he said. And then he was gone. Amelia stood alone in the yard, the sun beating down on her shoulders, and wondered if she'd just made things better or infinitely worse. That night, Cole didn't come inside until well past midnight. Amelia had tried to stay awake, had tried to wait up so she could explain everything properly. But exhaustion won. When she woke at dawn, she found him asleep on the sofa, still wearing his boots, one arm thrown over his face. She moved quietly to the stove and started coffee. The familiar routine calmed her nerves. Measure the grounds, add water, wait for the pot to boil. Simple, controllable, unlike everything else in her life. You're up early. His voice startled her. She turned to find him sitting up, running a hand through his hair. Couldn't sleep, she admitted. Me neither. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the pre-dawn darkness. We need to talk about what happens next. I know. If your father's as powerful as you say, he is. Then he can make life very difficult for both of us if he finds out where you are. Cole turned to face her. The question is, will he look? Amelia thought about it. Really thought about it. I don't know. He wanted me gone, but he also doesn't like losing control of anything that belongs to him. And in his mind, I still belong to him. Then we need a plan. What kind of plan? Cole poured himself coffee, took a long drink, and then said, We make this marriage real. Amelia nearly dropped her cup. What? Not, he waved a hand impatiently. Not like that. I mean legally real. We go into town today, register with the county clerk, make it official. That way, if anyone comes looking, there's a paper trail. You're not hiding. You're married, living your life. Nothing illegal about that. But if we register, my father could find the records. Maybe, but he'd also have to explain why he's hunting down a married woman across state lines. Might make him look bad in front of his judge friends. Cole set down his cup. It's a risk either way, but at least this way, you've got legal protection. I've got standing to tell people to mind their own business, and the town can't gossip about something that's recorded in black and white. She wanted to argue,
wanted to say there had to be another way. But there wasn't. "All right," she said. "We'll make it official. Today." Today. Cole nodded once, sharp and final. "Then get dressed. We leave in an hour."
Redwood Valley looked different in daylight, when you weren't running from something. Amelia sat behind Cole on the horse. They'd decided one horse was less conspicuous than two, and tried not to notice the stairs as they rode down Main Street. Everyone watched. Shopkeepers came to their windows. Women whispered behind their hands. Men stopped mid-conversation. By the time they reached the county clerk's office, half the town knew they were there. The clerk himself was a small man with wire-rimmed glasses and ink stains on his fingers. He looked up when they entered, then looked at Cole, and his face went pale. "Mr. Hawkins, what can I do for you?" "Need to register a marriage." Cole pulled off his hat. "This is my wife, Amelia." The clerk's eyes darted to her, then back to Cole. "I see. And when did this marriage take place?" "Week ago. Private ceremony." "I'll need witnesses." "Don't have any. It was just us." The clerk shifted uncomfortably.
"Mr. Hawkins, I'm afraid without witnesses, I can't—" "I'll witness it." The voice came from the doorway. They all turned to see Mrs. Eleanor Pritchard, the town's schoolteacher, standing with her arms crossed. She was a formidable woman in her 50s, known for speaking her mind regardless of who was listening. I saw them exchange vows. Amelia's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Cole recovered faster. "Much obliged, Mrs. Pritchard." "I'm not doing it for you, Cole Hawkins. I'm doing it because this young woman deserves better than to have her marriage questioned by every busybody in 3 counties. She walked forward and looked directly at Amelia. "I don't know your story, dear, but I know desperation when I see it. And I know Cole Hawkins isn't the monster people say he is. So if you want this marriage recorded, I'll sign whatever needs signing." "Why?" Amelia whispered. "You don't even know me." "No, but I know what it's like to need help and have everyone turn away." Mrs. Pritchard's expression softened. "Consider this my way of paying forward kindness I once received." The clerk cleared his throat. "I'll need one more witness." "I'll do it." This time, it was Dr. Samuel Chen who stepped into the office. He was younger than Mrs. Pritchard, maybe 40, with kind eyes and steady hands. "I was passing by. Heard you needed witnesses." Cole's jaw tightened. "You sure about that, Doc? People might talk." "Let them." Dr. Chen smiled slightly. "I've been dealing with people's talk since I arrived here from San Francisco 10 years ago. One more scandal won't kill me." And so, with 2 witnesses who had nothing to gain and everything to lose, Cole Hawkins and Amelia Rothschild became officially married in the eyes of the law. The clerk filled out the forms with meticulous precision. Cole signed first, his handwriting rough but legible. Then Amelia took the pen. She hesitated for just a moment over the name line. Then she wrote, "Amelia Marie Hawkins." It was done. They left the clerk's office to find a crowd waiting outside. Not a mob. Not exactly. But enough people that Amelia instinctively moved closer to Cole. Sheriff Garrett stood at the front, his face unreadable. Behind him were at least 20 townspeople, all watching with varying degrees of curiosity and suspicion. "So it's true," Garrett said. "You actually married her." "That's what the paper says." Cole's voice was steady. "You know people are going to talk." "People always talk." Cole took Amelia's hand, the first time he'd done so in public, and his grip was firm. "But she's my wife now. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly." The threat in his voice was unmistakable. For a long moment,
Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then Mrs. Pritchard stepped forward and did something nobody expected. She smiled. "Well, I think it's wonderful. Lord knows this town could use some good news for once." She looked at Amelia.
You're welcome at the church social next Sunday, Mrs. Hawkins. Both of you. I don't, Cole started. You're married now, Mrs. Pritchard interrupted. That means you're part of this community, whether you like it or not. And communities take care of their own. She glanced around at the crowd. Isn't that right, folks? A few people nodded. A few more murmured agreement. Not everyone, but enough. Sheriff Garrett's expression darkened. This isn't over, Cole. Yes, it is. Cole met his gaze steadily. Unless you've got actual charges to bring, Sheriff, I suggest you focus on real crimes instead of manufacturing problems that don't exist. Garrett opened his mouth to respond, then thought better of it. He turned and walked away, and the crowd slowly dispersed. But not before Amelia caught sight of one face in the group that made her blood run cold. A woman, tall, elegant, dressed in expensive traveling clothes that had no business being in a frontier town. She was watching Amelia with an expression that was part amusement, part calculation. And when their eyes met, the woman smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. Amelia's hand tightened on Cole's arm. We need to leave. Now. He didn't question it, just pulled her toward the horse and helped her mount before swinging up behind her. They were halfway out of town before Amelia trusted herself to speak. There was a woman in the crowd. Did you see her? Dark hair? Fancy dress? Yes. I saw her. Cole's voice was grim. She showed up in town 2 days ago, staying at the hotel. Told the owner she was looking for investment opportunities. She's lying. How do you know? Amelia's throat tightened. Because that's Victoria Rothschild, my father's wife. And if she's here, it means he knows exactly where I am. They didn't speak for the rest of the ride home. When they reached the ranch, Cole dismounted first and then stood there for a moment, his hands on his hips, staring at the mountains. Tell me everything, he said, finally. And I mean everything. No more secrets. So Amelia did. She told him about her mother's death, about her father's remarriage to a woman 20 years his junior, who had married him for money and status, about the way Victoria had systematically isolated Amelia from everyone she knew, friends, extended family, even the household staff. She told him about the night she'd overheard them talking in her father's study, how Victoria had convinced him that Amelia was the only thing standing between her and the full inheritance, how they'd planned to have her committed to an asylum for hysteria, a diagnosis that would have been easy to manufacture with her father's connections. That's when I ran, Amelia said. I took my mother's necklace, sold it, and bought my way out. The mail-order bride arrangement was supposed to be my new start, a clean break where they'd never think to look. She laughed bitterly. Turns out I'm not very good at disappearing. Cole was quiet for a long time. Then he said, She can't force you to go back. You're legally married to me now. That means your father has no claim. Legal doesn't matter to him. He's a federal judge, Cole. He can manufacture whatever claims he wants. Not without evidence. He'll make evidence. She turned to face him. You don't understand. My father doesn't lose. Ever. If he wants me back, he'll find a way. And anyone who gets in his way... Her voice broke. I shouldn't have dragged you into this. You didn't drag me anywhere. I made my own choice. But now you're in danger too. I've been in danger my whole life. Cole's voice was hard. Your stepmother showing up changes nothing. We stick to the plan. You're my wife. We live our lives. And if anyone tries to take you, they'll have to go through me first. You can't fight a federal judge. Watch me." The certainty in his voice should have been reassuring. Instead, it terrified her. Because Amelia had spent the last year learning that courage wasn't always enough. Sometimes the monsters won. Sometimes the people you loved got hurt just for standing next to you. And Cole Hawkins, for all his strength and all his reputation, was just one man against an empire. That night, Amelia couldn't sleep. She lay in Cole's bed. It was still his bed, even though she was the one using it, and stared at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the ranch. Crickets, wind, the distant call of a coyote, and underneath it all, the steady rhythm of Cole's breathing from the other room. She'd been here 2 weeks now. 2 weeks of hard work and harder lessons. 2 weeks of learning that Cole Hawkins was nothing like what people said, and everything she'd hoped he might be. He was patient when she failed, kind when she succeeded, careful in ways that suggested he understood what it meant to be broken, and was determined not to break anyone else. And now she'd repaid his kindness by painting a target on his back. "I can hear you thinking from out here." His voice startled her. She sat up quickly. "I'm sorry, did I wake you?" "I wasn't asleep." There was a pause. "You all right?" "No." "Honest answer. I appreciate that." She heard movement, then saw his silhouette in the doorway. "You want to talk about it?" "I want to figure out how to make Victoria leave without destroying everything you've built here." "Not your job to figure that out." "Yes, it is. She's here because of me." "And you're here because I said yes." Cole leaned against the doorframe. "So if we're assigning blame, we might as well share it." Despite everything, Amelia almost smiled. "That's not how blame works." "Isn't it? Seems to me most problems are caused by more than one person making more than one choice." He crossed his arms. "You chose to run. I chose to help. Victoria chose to follow. Your father chose to be a bastard. At this point, there's enough blame to go around twice." "So what do we do?" "We wait, see what she does next, and we prepare." "Prepare how?" Cole pushed off the doorframe and walked into the room. In the moonlight, his face was all sharp angles and shadow. "Tomorrow we start teaching you to shoot." "What? Why?" "Because if your father's willing to have you committed to an asylum, he's willing to do worse. And I'm not always going to be around to protect you." He met her eyes. "You need to know how to protect yourself." Amelia's heart was pounding. "I don't know if I can." "You can. You stopped a stranger's horse in the middle of Main Street and begged him for help. You worked yourself bloody for 2 weeks without complaint. You stood up to the sheriff." His voice softened. "You're stronger than you think, Amelia. You just need to believe it." She wanted to argue, wanted to say he was wrong. But looking at him, standing there in the moonlight, believing in her with an intensity that was almost painful, she found herself nodding instead. "All right," she whispered. "Teach me." "I will." He turned to leave, then paused. "And Amelia, whatever happens with Victoria, or your father, or anyone else, you're not facing it alone. Understand?" She nodded again, not trusting her voice. Cole left without another word, but his promise hung in the air long after he was gone. And for the first time since she'd seen Victoria in that crowd, Amelia let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she had a chance. The gun felt wrong in Amelia's hands. Too heavy, too cold, too much like something that could take a life instead of save one. "You're gripping it like it's going to bite you," Cole said from behind her. They were in the clearing behind the barn, far enough from the house that the noise wouldn't spook the horses. "Relax your shoulders." "I can't." "Yes, you can." He moved closer, adjusting her stance. His hands on her arms were gentle but firm.
Breathe. The gun's not your enemy. Fear is. Amelia took a breath and tried again. The target, a row of old tin cans lined up on a fallen log, seemed impossibly far away. Now squeeze. Don't pull. Squeeze. She squeezed.
The gunshot cracked through the morning air, and the recoil nearly knocked her backward. Cole's hand steadied her, but the bullet had gone wide by at least 3 feet. "Again," he said. "I missed." "Everyone misses the first time." "Again." She raised the gun and fired. Missed. Fired again. Missed. By the 10th shot, her hands were shaking and her ears were ringing, and she wanted to throw the damn gun into the creek. "I can't do this," she said. "You're doing it right now." "I'm failing." "You're learning." Cole took the gun from her and reloaded it with practiced efficiency. Failing is part of learning. You think I hit every target the first time I picked up a gun? You probably did. I didn't. He handed the gun back to her. I shot my own foot the first time. Couldn't walk right for a month. My father laughed so hard he nearly choked. Amelia stared at him. "You're lying." "I'm not." Something flickered in his eyes. "Everyone starts somewhere, Amelia. The difference between the people who survive and the people who don't is that the survivors keep trying after they fail." She looked down at the gun in her hands, then back at the cans. "One more time," she said. "That's my girl." The words hit her harder than the recoil. My girl, like she was something worth claiming, something worth protecting. She raised the gun, steadied her breathing, and fired. The leftmost can flew backward off the log. Cole's hand came down on her shoulder, warm and solid. "There you go." Amelia lowered the gun, her heart pounding. "I did it." "You did. Now do it again." They practiced for 2 hours every morning that week. By the 3rd day, Amelia could hit 4 out of 6 targets. By the 5th, she could reload without fumbling. By the 7th, she could draw and fire in under 3 seconds. Not fast enough to outdraw a real gunfighter, but fast enough to make someone think twice. "You're a natural," Cole said on the 8th morning as she hit 5 cans in a row. "Better than most men I've seen." "That's because most men think they already know everything." Amelia reloaded and aimed again. "I know I don't." "Smart." He leaned against a tree, watching her. "You keep that attitude, you'll outlive all of us." The words hung in the air for a moment. Then Amelia lowered the gun and turned to face him. "Can I ask you something?" "You're going to anyway." "Why did you really say yes? When I asked you to marry me that first day?" She held his gaze. "And don't tell me it was just because you were tired of being alone. There's more to it than that." Cole was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "You remind me of someone." "Who?" "My sister." Amelia's breath caught. "I didn't know you had a sister." "I don't. Not anymore." His jaw tightened. "She died 10 years ago. Fever. I was out working cattle when it happened. By the time I got home, she was already gone." "I'm sorry." "She was 15. Brave as hell. Used to follow me everywhere, asking questions, wanting to learn everything I knew." He looked at Amelia. "She would have liked you." "Is that why you helped me? Because I reminded you of her?" "Partly." He pushed off the tree. "But mostly because when you stood in front of my horse and asked for help, you didn't apologize for needing it. You didn't make excuses. You just asked. And I realized I hadn't seen that kind of courage in a long time." Amelia's throat tightened. "Your sister must have been amazing." "She was." Cole's voice was rough. "And she deserved better than dying alone while I was off doing work that didn't matter." "It wasn't your fault." "Wasn't it?" He looked away. "I chose the cattle over family.
That choice killed her. No, the fever killed her. You were just trying to survive. Survival doesn't mean much if you lose everyone worth surviving for. He met her eyes again. That's why I said yes to you, Amelia. Because I wasn't going to make the same mistake twice. Someone needed help, and this time I was going to be there. She wanted to say something comforting, something wise, but all she could manage was, "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet." Cole's expression hardened. Victoria's still out there, and she's not going to give up. As if summoned by his words, they heard hoofbeats approaching. Cole's hand went to his gun before he could stop himself. But it wasn't Victoria riding up the path. It was Dr. Chen, and he was riding fast.
Cole! The doctor pulled his horse to a stop, breathing hard. "We've got a problem." "What kind of problem?" "The kind that involves federal marshals and arrest warrants." Dr. Chen dismounted quickly. "Mrs. Rothschild, Victoria. She went to Sheriff Garrett this morning with papers, claiming Amelia is wanted for theft in Philadelphia. Says she stole over $10,000 in jewelry and securities." Amelia's world tilted. "That's a lie." "I know it is, but the paperwork looks real. Garrett's getting pressure from the mayor to arrest you." Dr. Chen looked at Cole. "She's claiming you're harboring a fugitive. Says if you don't turn Amelia over by sundown, they'll arrest you, too." "Let them try." Cole's voice was ice. "Cole, these are federal charges. Real or not, they carry weight." Dr. Chen's expression was grim. "If they arrest her, she'll be extradited to Philadelphia. And once she's there, she'll disappear into an asylum," Amelia finished. Her hands were shaking. "That was always the plan. Accuse me of a crime, have me declared unstable, commit me. No one questions a judge putting his troubled daughter away for her own good." "Over my dead body," Cole said. "That can be arranged too." The voice came from the path behind them. They all turned to see Victoria Rothschild riding toward them, flanked by two men Amelia didn't recognize. Both were wearing marshal badges. Both had their hands near their guns. Victoria looked immaculate, despite the trail dust. Her smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "Hello, Amelia. You've been difficult to track down." "Victoria." Amelia forced herself to stand tall. "What do you want?" "What I've always wanted. For you to come home and accept the help you so clearly need." Victoria's tone was syrupy sweet. "Your father is very worried about you. Running off like that. Stealing from the family. Marrying some frontier gunman without even informing us. It's obvious you're not well." "I'm perfectly well." "Are you?" "Because the Amelia I knew would never behave this way. The fever you had last year must have affected your mind more than we realized." Victoria turned to the marshals. "Gentlemen, as you can see, my stepdaughter is clearly in distress. We need to take her back to Philadelphia, where she can receive proper medical care." One of the marshals, a tall man with a scar across his cheek, stepped forward. "Mrs. Hawkins, I'm afraid we're going to need you to come with us." "She's not going anywhere." Cole moved in front of Amelia. "And unless you've got a warrant signed by a Colorado judge, you've got no authority here." "We have federal papers. I don't care if you've got a letter from God himself. This is Colorado territory, and Colorado law says you need local jurisdiction to make an arrest." Cole's hand hovered near his gun. "So unless Sheriff Garrett is with you, and I notice he's not, you can turn around and ride back to town." The scarred marshal's eyes narrowed. "You threatening us?" "I'm stating facts. You want to call it a threat? That's your business." "Cole, don't." Amelia put a hand on his arm. "They'll just come back with more men." "Let them." "I won't let you get hurt because of me." "And I won't let them take you." He looked at her, and his eyes were fierce. "I meant what I said last night. Whatever happens, we face it together." Victoria laughed. It was a cold, brittle sound. "How touching. The killer and the thief,
united in delusion. She urged her horse closer. But here's what you don't understand, Amelia. Your father doesn't just want you back. He wants you destroyed. And he spent the last year making sure that when this day came, you'd have nowhere to run and no one to help you.
He underestimated her, Cole said.
Did he? Because from where I'm standing, she looks rather cornered.
Victoria's smile widened.
Tell me, Mr. Hawkins,
How much did my stepdaughter tell you about her family? About the connections we have? The judges, the politicians, the very men who write the laws you're so fond of quoting. Enough to know you're all corrupt. Corrupt is such an ugly word. We prefer influential. Victoria pulled a document from her saddlebag and held it up. This is a writ of extradition, signed by 3 separate judges. It doesn't need local approval. It supersedes territorial law. And it means that if you continue to harbor my stepdaughter, you will be arrested for obstruction of justice. She paused. Or we can make this simple. Amelia comes with us now, peacefully, and you go back to your quiet life. No charges, no trouble. You can even tell people she left you. No one would blame you for that. Amelia felt Cole's body tense beside her. For one horrible moment, she thought he might actually be considering it. Then he said, I've got a counteroffer. Oh? You leave. Now.
And you tell Judge Rothschild that if he wants his daughter, he's going to have to come get her himself. Because I'm not handing her over to hired muscle and a woman whose only talent is manipulating men. Victoria's smile vanished. You're making a mistake. Won't be my first. Cole's voice dropped dangerously low. Now get off my property before I forget I'm trying to be civilized. The scarred marshal reached for his gun. Dr. Chen was faster. He drew and fired into the air, a warning shot that made all the horses dance, and both marshals reached for their weapons. But before anyone could fire again, Cole had his gun out and aimed directly at Victoria. Next person who draws dies, he said calmly, starting with her. Victoria's face went white. You wouldn't dare. Try me. For 5 endless seconds, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then Victoria pulled her horse back. This isn't over. I know. My husband will destroy you, both of you. He can try. Cole didn't lower his gun. Now leave. I won't ask again. Victoria turned her horse and rode away. The marshals followed, but the scarred one looked back over his shoulder with an expression that promised violence. They didn't relax until the riders were out of sight. That was incredibly stupid, Dr. Chen said, holstering his gun. Yeah, Cole finally lowered his weapon. But it bought us time. Time for what? To figure out how to fight back. He turned to Amelia. You said your father's a federal judge. That means he's got enemies. Other judges who don't like his rulings. Lawyers he's crossed. Politicians he's blocked. His eyes were hard. We find those people. We make them allies. That could take months. Then we've got work to do. Cole looked at Dr. Chen. Sam, I need you to send telegraphs. Find out who in Philadelphia hates Judge Rothschild enough to help us. I'll try. But Cole, even if we find someone, there's no guarantee they'll stand against a federal judge for a woman they've never met. Then we give them a reason to. Cole's jaw set. We prove Victoria and the judge are corrupt. We find evidence of the fraud, the theft of Amelia's inheritance, anything that shows they're the criminals, not her. How? Amelia's voice was small. All the records are back in Philadelphia. We can't get to them. Then we make them come to us. Cole turned to her. You said your mother left you money. How much? I don't know exactly, but my father used to brag about her estate being worth over $50,000. Dr. Chen whistled. That's a fortune.
And it all should have gone to Amelia when she turned 21. Cole's mind was clearly working through a plan. So where did it go?
My father said I'd already spent it, but I hadn't touched a penny.
Then he stole it. Probably moved it into accounts under his wife's name. Cole started pacing. If we can prove that, if we can show he embezzled his own daughter's inheritance, we can bring him down.
But how do we prove it? Amelia asked.
We make him admit it. Cole stopped pacing and looked at her. We set a trap. Make him think he's won, and when he comes to gloat, we get him on record. It was a dangerous plan, maybe an impossible one, but it was the only plan they had. That night, Amelia sat at the kitchen table, writing letters by lamplight. Not to her father, not to Victoria, to every person she'd ever known in Philadelphia who might still remember her mother. Old friends, distant relatives, business associates of her mother's family who might have records or memories or anything that could help. She wrote until her hand cramped and her eyes burned. Cole sat across from her, cleaning his guns with methodical precision. Neither of them spoke much. There wasn't much to say. They were at war now, and wars had casualties. You should sleep, Cole said finally. Can't. Try anyway. We've got a long fight ahead. Amelia set down her pen and looked at him. Really looked at him. This man who'd agreed to marry a stranger and was now risking everything to protect her. Why are you doing this? She asked. You could just let them take me. It would be easier. Easier doesn't mean right. But you barely know me. I know enough. He set down the gun he was cleaning and met her eyes. I know you're brave. I know you're strong. I know you stood in front of my horse and asked for help instead of giving up. And I know... He paused. I know that if I let them take you, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering if I could have saved you. And I'm tired of wondering about the people I should have saved. Amelia's throat closed up. Cole, don't. Just... He looked away. Just get some sleep. We'll finish this tomorrow. She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he didn't owe her anything. But the truth was, she didn't want to sleep alone tonight. Didn't want to face the darkness knowing that tomorrow might bring marshals and warrants and the end of everything they'd built. Can I ask you something? She said quietly. Always. When you said I was your girl earlier, at the shooting practice? She took a breath. Did you mean that? Cole was very still. What do you think? I think... She stood and walked around the table until she was standing in front of him. I think maybe this arrangement isn't as fake as we've been pretending. He looked up at her. No, it's not. So, what is it? I don't know. His voice was rough. But I know I care what happens to you. And I know that scares the hell out of me. Amelia's hand moved to his face before she could stop herself. His skin was warm beneath her palm, roughened by weather and work and years of living hard. You scare me too, she whispered. Good. He stood, and suddenly they were close enough that she could feel the heat of him, smell the leather and gunpowder, and something uniquely Cole. Fear means you're paying attention. To what? To this. And then he kissed her. It wasn't gentle, wasn't careful. It was desperate and fierce and tasted like coffee and danger and all the things they couldn't say out loud. Amelia kissed him back like he was air and she'd been drowning. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Cole rested his forehead against hers. This complicates things, he said. Everything's already complicated. Fair point. He pulled back slightly. But we should still talk about what this means. Tomorrow. Amelia's hands were still fisted in his shirt. Tonight, can we just...
B? Yeah. He nodded and pulled her close. She rested her head against his chest and listened to the steady beat of his heart. Outside, the wind picked up. Storm coming, probably. But inside, for just this moment, everything was warm and safe and real. It wouldn't last. They both knew that. But God, it felt good to hold on to something while they could. Morning came too fast. Amelia woke alone in bed. Her bed now, she supposed, though the lines were getting blurred, with sunlight streaming through the window and the smell of bacon frying. She dressed quickly and went to find Cole in the kitchen, flipping eggs like nothing world-changing had happened last night. "Morning," he said, without turning around. "Morning." She poured herself coffee. "Did you sleep?" "Some. You?" "Better than I expected." She sat at the table. "We should talk about last night." "We should. But first, we've got company coming." Amelia's stomach dropped. "Victoria?" "No. Mrs. Pritchard, and about half the church ladies, according to the dust cloud I spotted 20 minutes ago." He finally looked at her, and his eyes were warm. "Apparently word got out about the confrontation yesterday. They're coming to show support." "How do you know that?" "Because Mrs. Pritchard doesn't do anything by accident. If she's bringing the church ladies, it's because she wants the whole town to know whose side she's on." Sure enough, 10 minutes later, a wagon rolled up with 6 women crammed inside. Mrs. Pritchard led them to the door with the determination of a general leading troops into battle. "We've brought food," she announced before Cole could say a word. "And we're not leaving until every busybody in 3 counties knows that this town stands with you." Amelia's eyes stung. "Mrs. Pritchard, you don't have to—" "Yes, we do. Because that Victoria woman came into town yesterday bragging about how she was going to drag you back to Philadelphia in chains. And I'll be damned if we let some fancy city woman destroy one of our own." She marched inside and started unpacking baskets. "Now, we're having a barn raising next week for the Johnsons who lost their roof in that windstorm. And you're both coming. That's not a request." Cole looked at Amelia. She looked back. And despite everything, despite the warrants and the threats and the kiss that had changed everything, they both started to laugh. Because maybe, just maybe, they weren't as alone as they'd thought. The church ladies stayed for 3 hours, and by the time they left, the kitchen was full of enough food to feed an army, and the house smelled like cinnamon and fresh bread and something Amelia hadn't experienced in years. Hope. "That woman is terrifying," Cole said after the wagon finally rolled away. "I'd rather face down a gang of outlaws than disappoint Mrs. Pritchard." "She likes you." "She tolerates me. There's a difference." He picked up one of the apple pies and inspected it. "But I'll take it." Amelia was about to respond when she saw the rider approaching. Not Victoria this time. Someone worse. Sheriff Garrett. And he wasn't alone. "Stay inside," Cole said immediately, his hand moving to his gun. "No." Amelia stepped beside him. "We're in this together, remember?" He looked like he wanted to argue, but didn't have time. Garrett was already dismounting, flanked by 4 deputies Amelia recognized from town. None of them looked happy to be there. "Cole." Garrett's voice was tight. "Need to talk to you. Official business." "Then talk." "Judge Rothschild sent another telegram. Says if you don't turn over his daughter by tomorrow morning, he's sending federal agents with orders to arrest both of you." Garrett paused. "And he's not bluffing. I've seen the orders. They're real." "Let them come," Cole said. "Damn it, Cole, this isn't a joke," Garrett exploded. "You're one man. They'll bring 20, maybe more, and they won't hesitate to shoot if you resist." "Then I guess I'll have to be faster." "You can't outdraw 20 men." "Watch me."
Cole! One of the deputies stepped forward. Young kid, maybe 20, with nervous hands. Please, we don't want to see you dead. Or her. Just let her go.
It's not worth dying over. Amelia felt Cole's anger like a physical thing beside her. But before he could respond, she spoke. What's your name? She asked the deputy.
Michael, ma'am. Michael Patterson.
How old are you, Michael?
22.
Do you have family?
He nodded. Ma and 2 sisters.
And if someone accused your sister of a crime she didn't commit, then threatened to lock her away in an asylum where she'd never see daylight again?
Amelia's voice was steady.
Would you tell her it wasn't worth fighting for?
Michael's face went red. That's different.
No, it's not. It's exactly the same.
She looked at all of them.
My father is a liar. My stepmother is a thief. And they're using their power to destroy me because I dared to escape them. If you help them, if you force me to go back, you're no better than they are.
We're just following orders, another deputy muttered.
Then you're cowards, Amelia said flatly, and you know it.
Garrett's jaw clenched. Mrs. Hawkins, I understand you're upset.
Upset? She laughed bitterly. Sheriff, I'm not upset. I'm terrified. Because I know what happens when I go back. I disappear. Maybe into an asylum. Maybe into a grave. Either way, I'm gone. And no one will ask questions because my father is a federal judge, and federal judges don't make mistakes. She took a breath. So if you're going to arrest me, arrest me. But don't pretend you're doing it for justice. You're doing it because it's easier than standing up to power. Silence. The kind that hurt. Then Michael spoke up. Sheriff, what if she's telling the truth?
Doesn't matter, Garrett said, but his voice wavered.
Orders are orders. Actually, it does matter. Dr. Chen came riding up fast, his face flushed. Because I just got a response to my telegrams. Judge Rothschild has been under investigation for the past 6 months. Financial irregularities. Missing estate funds. The Philadelphia District Attorney is building a case. Garrett turned. What? I contacted lawyers in Philadelphia. Turns out the judge has a lot of enemies. And when I mentioned Amelia's situation, 3 different attorneys said the same thing. They've been waiting for someone to come forward with evidence of his corruption. Dr. Chen pulled out a folder. I've got statements here from 2 of them, confirming that Amelia's mother's estate was worth over $60,000, and that none of it was ever transferred to Amelia, despite the will explicitly stating she was the sole heir. That doesn't prove, Garrett started. It proves he stole from his own daughter, which makes every charge he's filed against her suspect at best, fraudulent at worst. Dr. Chen looked at Amelia. You were right. He moved the money into Victoria's accounts. But he got greedy, started using it for investments, political bribes, left a paper trail a mile wide. Amelia's knees went weak.
You can prove all this?
I can prove enough that any honest judge will throw out his warrants and start an investigation. Dr. Chen smiled. You're not going back to Philadelphia, Mrs. Hawkins. Your father is.
This changes nothing, Garrett said, but he didn't sound convinced anymore. Until those warrants are officially dismissed, I'm still obligated to uphold the law, Cole interrupted. And Colorado law says you need probable cause to arrest someone on federal charges. Do you have probable cause, Sheriff? Or do you just have orders from a corrupt judge who's about to be arrested himself? Garrett looked at his deputies. They looked back at him. None of them spoke. Finally, Garrett said, I need to think about this. Think fast, Cole said. Because if federal agents show up on my property tomorrow, there's going to be bloodshed. and I'm going to make damn sure it's not mine. Garrett mounted his horse. You've got 24 hours. After that, he shook his head.
After that, I don't know.
They rode away, and Amelia finally allowed herself to breathe.
Is it real? She asked Dr. Chen. The investigation? It's real. Started after another family came forward, claiming the judge had mishandled their relative's estate. Once the attorneys started digging, they found dozens of irregularities. He handed her the folder. Your mother's estate is just one piece, but it's a big piece.
Amelia opened the folder with shaking hands. Inside were copies of telegrams, legal statements, account records showing money transferred from her mother's estate to accounts in Victoria's name. Proof.
How long have you been working on this? She whispered. Since the day you told me about your father.
Dr. Chen smiled.
I'm a doctor. I know corruption when I see it. And I wasn't going to let you face it alone.
She looked at Cole. He was staring at Dr. Chen like he'd just performed a miracle.
Sam, Cole said quietly. Thank you. Don't thank me yet.
We still have to survive until the warrants are dismissed. Dr. Chen's expression sobered.
And Victoria's still in town. She knows the walls are closing in, which makes her dangerous.
As if on cue, thunder rumbled in the distance. Cole looked up at the sky. Dark clouds were building over the mountains, moving fast. Storm's coming, he said. Big one.
How big?
Amelia asked. Big enough to worry about. He turned to Dr. Chen. You should head back to town before it hits.
I'll be fine, but Cole, those clouds are moving wrong. Coming down from the high country, too fast.
Dr. Chen frowned.
That's not normal weather.
No, it's not. Cole was already moving toward the barn, which means the river's going to rise. Fast.
The town.
I know. Cole grabbed his saddle. I need to check the upper ridge, see how much snowmelt is coming down.
I'm going with you,
Amelia said. No.
Yes.
She followed him into the barn.
You said we're in this together. That means I don't stay behind while you ride into danger. Amelia, I can ride, I can shoot, and you might need help. She grabbed Thunder's saddle before Cole could stop her. So either we both go, or neither of us goes.
Cole stared at her for a long moment. Then he sighed. You're going to get us both killed.
Probably. She started saddling Thunder. But at least we'll die together.
Despite everything, Cole almost smiled. That's not as comforting as you think it is. They rode out 10 minutes later, leaving Dr. Chen to wait at the ranch. The storm was building faster than Cole had anticipated, and by the time they reached the upper ridge, rain was starting to fall in heavy sheets. What they saw when they crested the ridge made Amelia's blood run cold. The river was already over its banks, and it was rising fast.
Sweet Jesus, Cole breathed.
The whole snowpack must be melting at once. I've never seen it this high this fast.
How long before it reaches town?
2 hours, maybe less. He turned his horse. We need to warn them, now. They rode back down the mountain at a pace that was just shy of suicidal. The rain was coming down so hard, Amelia could barely see 10 feet in front of her, but Thunder seemed to know the path by instinct, following Cole's horse through the darkness. They reached Redwood Valley just as the first surge of water hit the lower end of Main Street. People were screaming, running, trying to move belongings and livestock to higher ground. Cole rode straight to the sheriff's office and dismounted before his horse had fully stopped. "Garrett!" he shouted. "The river's breaking! We've got maybe an hour before the whole valley floods!" Garrett came running out, took one look at the water rushing down the street, and went pale.
Sweet Mary and Joseph.
We need to evacuate, now.
Get everyone to the church. It's on the highest ground in town. Cole was already moving.
Ring the bell. Get every able-bodied man helping. Cole, we can't. We don't have time to argue. Cole grabbed him by the shoulders. People are going to die if we don't move. Are you going to help, or are you going to stand here debating? Garrett stared at him for 1 second. 2. Then he turned and started shouting orders. What followed was chaos. Cole and Amelia split up, racing through the streets, pounding on doors, pulling people out of buildings that were already starting to flood. The water was rising faster than anyone could have predicted, turning streets into rivers in minutes. Amelia found Mrs. Pritchard trying to save her schoolhouse. "Leave it!" Amelia shouted over the roar of water. "It's not worth your life." "The children's books can be replaced." Amelia grabbed her arm and pulled. "You can't." They ran for higher ground together, and Amelia felt the moment Mrs. Pritchard's foot slip. She caught her before she could fall into the rushing water, dragging her back with strength she didn't know she had. "Thank you," Mrs. Pritchard gasped. "Thank me when we're not drowning." Across town, Cole had found something worse. The boarding house on the east side had collapsed, trapping at least 4 people inside. He could hear them screaming. Without thinking, he waded into the water, waist deep now and rising, and started pulling debris away from the entrance. "Cole!" Dr. Chen appeared beside him. "You'll get yourself killed." "Then help me or get out of the way." They worked together, pulling boards and stones aside until they could see inside. 3 women and a young boy huddled in the corner, water rising around them. "We're going to get you out," Cole shouted. "But you need to move fast." He pulled the first woman out, then the second. Dr. Chen got the boy. But when Cole reached for the third woman, the building shifted and more debris came crashing down. The woman screamed. Cole didn't hesitate. He dove back in, ignoring the pain as a beam caught his shoulder, and grabbed her hand. "Hold on to me." She did, gripping so hard her nails drew blood. Cole pulled with everything he had, and they both fell backward into the rushing water, just as the rest of the building collapsed. Dr. Chen pulled them to shore, and the woman sobbed against Cole's chest. "Thank you," she gasped. "Thank you, thank you." "Save it." Cole was already standing. "We're not done yet." The next hour was a blur of water and screaming and desperate saves. Cole pulled a family of 5 from their flooding home. Amelia found 2 children trapped on a roof and talked them through climbing down to safety. Together, they led horses and cattle to higher ground, carried elderly people who couldn't walk, and worked until their bodies were shaking with exhaustion. And all the while, the water kept rising. By the time they got the last stragglers to the church, the lower half of Redwood Valley was completely underwater. Houses were collapsed. Buildings were torn apart. The general store was gone entirely, swept away by the current. But everyone was alive. Every single person had made it to safety. Cole collapsed against the church wall, breathing hard, covered in mud and blood from a dozen scrapes he didn't remember getting. Amelia found him there a moment later and sank down beside him. "We did it," she whispered. "We did." "Cole," she took his hand. "You saved them. All of them." "We saved them." "No." Sheriff Garrett's voice made them both look up. He was standing a few feet away, his face unreadable. "She's right. You saved them. Most of us were still trying to figure out what to do when you started pulling people out of buildings. Without you," his voice broke. "Without you, half this town would be dead." Around them, people were starting to realize the same thing. The man who'd terrorized them for years had just risked everything to save their lives. Mrs. Patterson, Michael's mother, stepped forward. She was soaking wet, clutching her daughters, and there were tears streaming down her face. "Mr. Hawkins," she said, "I'm sorry for everything we said about you. Everything we believed." She looked at her son. "Michael told me what your wife said earlier, about standing up to power, about not being cowards." She straightened her shoulders. "You're right. We were cowards. But you," her voice shook, "you're a hero. And if anyone tries to arrest you or your wife, they'll have to go through this entire town first." She's right. It was the boarding house woman Cole had saved. "We stand with you." "Both of you," Mrs. Pritchard added, putting an arm around Amelia. "From now on, anyone who comes for the Hawkins family comes for all of us." One by one, people started nodding. Voices murmured agreement. And Cole Hawkins, the man they'd feared for 5 years, found himself surrounded by the very people who'd once crossed the street to avoid him. But before anyone could say more, the church door slammed open. Victoria stood there, soaking wet, her perfect hair plastered to her skull, her expensive dress ruined by mud. Behind her were the two marshals, looking equally bedraggled. "How touching," she spat. "The monster plays hero, and suddenly all is forgiven." She pointed at Amelia. "But the law doesn't care about heroics. That woman is still wanted for theft, and we're taking her. Tonight." "The hell you are!" Michael Patterson stepped forward, his hand on his gun. "The lady stays." "You're a deputy. You're sworn to uphold the law." "I'm sworn to uphold justice." Michael's voice was steady. "And there's no justice in what you're doing." The scarred marshal reached for his gun. "Boy, you don't want to do this." "Actually, I do." Michael drew his weapon.
Because I'm tired of being afraid, and I'm tired of watching good people suffer because we're too scared to do the right thing. Around the room, other men started standing, started reaching for weapons, ready to fight. Victoria's face went white. "You're all insane." "Maybe," Cole said, stepping forward, "but we're insane together, and that makes us dangerous." He looked at the marshals. "Your choice, gentlemen. You can try to take my wife and start a war you won't win, or you can walk away and tell the judge that Redwood Valley doesn't scare easy." The scarred marshal looked around the room, looked at the dozens of people staring back at him with hard eyes and ready weapons. Then he holstered his gun. "This isn't over," he said to Victoria. "Like hell it isn't," she hissed. "I paid you, you paid us to do a job, not to die." He turned and walked toward the door. "Come on, we're leaving." Victoria stood there for one long moment, shaking with rage. Then she looked at Amelia. "You think you've won? You've won nothing. My husband will destroy you. He'll destroy all of you." "Let him try," Amelia said quietly. And for the first time, she actually believed it. Victoria left, slamming the door so hard the whole building shook. In the silence that followed, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then Mrs. Pritchard started clapping. The sound was so unexpected that everyone jumped. But then someone else joined in. Then another. Then another. Within seconds, the entire church was applauding. For Cole. For Amelia. For a marriage that had started as a desperate lie and become something nobody had expected. A symbol of hope. Cole looked at Amelia, and she looked back. And in that moment, surrounded by the people they'd saved and the town that had finally accepted them, something shifted. This wasn't an arrangement anymore. It wasn't pretend. It was real. And nothing, not Victoria, not judges, not the whole weight of federal power, was going to take it away. The storm lasted 3 days. 3 days of rain and wind and water that wouldn't stop rising. 3 days of the entire town crammed into the church and the handful of buildings on high ground, waiting for the flood to recede. 3 days of Cole and Amelia working side by side, rationing supplies, keeping people calm, and pretending they weren't both waiting for the other shoe to drop. Because Victoria hadn't just left. She'd retreated.
and everyone knew she'd be back. On the fourth morning, the rain finally stopped. The water began to recede, revealing a town that looked like it had been through a war. Half the buildings were gone or damaged beyond repair. The bridge was destroyed. The general store was nothing but scattered lumber. But everyone was alive. "We'll rebuild," Mrs. Pritchard said, standing in the church doorway and surveying the damage. "We've done it before.
We'll do it again. This time you won't have to do it alone." Cole appeared beside her, his face drawn with exhaustion. "I've got lumber at the ranch, tools, whatever you need." "Mr. Hawkins." "Cole." She smiled slightly. "Cole, you've already given us more than we deserve. You don't have to—" "Yes, I do." He looked at her steadily. "This is my town too now, whether I like it or not." "Do you like it?" Cole glanced back at Amelia, who was helping Dr. Chen organize medical supplies. "Yeah, I think I do." Mrs. Pritchard followed his gaze and her smile widened. "She's good for you." "She's better than I deserve." "None of us get what we deserve, Cole. We get what we fight for. And you've been fighting for her since the day she stepped in front of your horse." She patted his arm. "Don't stop now." Before Cole could respond, Sheriff Garrett came running up, a telegram in his hand and his face flushed. "Cole, you need to see this." Cole took the telegram and read it quickly, then read it again. Then looked up at Garrett with an expression somewhere between shock and disbelief. "Is this real?" "As real as it gets," Garrett was grinning. "Judge Rothschild was arrested yesterday morning in Philadelphia. Embezzlement, fraud, obstruction of justice. The warrant for Amelia's arrest has been dismissed. She's free." The words hung in the air for a moment. Then Cole let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "She's free," he repeated. "All charges dropped. Victoria fled before they could arrest her too, but they've got warrants out." Garrett's grin faded. "Cole, I owe you an apology. Both of you. I should have believed Amelia from the start. Should have stood up to the pressure. Instead, "You did your job," Cole interrupted. "Can't fault a man for that." "I can fault myself for not doing it better." Garrett held out his hand. "For what it's worth, I'm glad I was wrong about you. Both of you." Cole shook his hand. "That mean you're going to stop giving me suspicious looks every time I come to town?" "Probably not, but I'll try to be more subtle about it." Despite everything, Cole laughed. It felt good, felt right. Felt like maybe the world was finally tilting back towards something that made sense. "Where's Amelia?" Garrett asked. "I'll find her." Cole was already moving. "She needs to hear this." He found her in the back of the church, wrapping bandages around an elderly man's arm while talking quietly to him about his grandchildren. She looked up when Cole approached, and whatever she saw in his face made her freeze. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong." He pulled her gently away from the patient and handed her the telegram. "Read this." She did, and the color drained from her face. "He's arrested?" "Yes." "And the charges against me?" "Gone. All of them." Cole's hands were shaking slightly. "You're free, Amelia. It's over." For a long moment, she just stared at the telegram. Then she looked up at him with tears streaming down her face. "I'm free," she whispered. "You're free." She collapsed against his chest, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. Cole wrapped his arms around her and held on, letting her cry out weeks of fear and exhaustion and terror that she tried so hard to keep hidden. Around them, people were starting to notice, starting to whisper. But Cole didn't care. Let them see. Let them know. This woman had faced down hell and come out the other side, and she deserved to cry about it. When she finally pulled back,
Her face was blotchy, and her eyes were red, and she'd never looked more beautiful to him.
"What happens now?" she asked.
Now? Cole brushed a tear from her cheek. Now you decide what you want.
"What I want?"
You're free, Amelia. You can go anywhere, do anything. You're not bound by fear anymore. Or by me, if that's what you choose. She blinked. You think I'd leave? I think you came here because you were desperate.
"And now you're not."
His throat tightened.
"So, if you want to go, back east or somewhere else or anywhere that isn't a broken-down ranch with a man who doesn't know the first thing about making someone happy, I'll understand."
Cole Hawkins, you are the stupidest smart man I've ever met. He blinked. What? Do you honestly think I've stayed here the past month just because I had nowhere else to go? She grabbed his face with both hands. I stayed because of you. Because somewhere between that first terrified moment in the street and right now, I fell in love with you. And if you think I'm going anywhere without you, you're out of your mind. Cole's world tilted. You love me? Of course I love you, you idiot. I've been trying to tell you for weeks, but you're so busy being noble and giving me choices that you won't let me choose you. Amelia, I choose you, she said fiercely. I choose this town. I choose this life. I choose everything that comes with being your wife.
Really, your wife. Not on paper, not for appearances, for real. He kissed her then, in front of half the town, and didn't care who saw. And when they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. I love you too, he said quietly. Probably since the moment you made friends with Thunder. Definitely since you learned to shoot. Absolutely since you stood up to Victoria and told her you wouldn't go quietly. Then it's settled, Amelia smiled through her tears. We're married. For real this time. No takebacks. No takebacks, Cole agreed. Around them people started cheering. Mrs. Pritchard was crying. Dr. Chen was grinning like a fool. Even Sheriff Garrett looked pleased. But their moment was shattered by the sound of a horse galloping into town at breakneck speed. Everyone turned to see a rider approaching, covered in dust, clearly exhausted, riding hard enough that his horse was lathered and panting. The man dismounted and staggered toward them, and when he got close enough that Amelia could see his face, her blood turned to ice. It was Thomas Brennan, the man who'd stolen her money and abandoned her. Amelia, he shouted. Thank God I found you. Cole stepped in front of her immediately, his hand on his gun. You've got 5 seconds to explain what you're doing here before I shoot you. Wait, please, Thomas held up his hands. I know what you think, but I didn't abandon her. I was arrested. Convenient story, Cole said coldly. It's true. Victoria Rothschild paid the sheriff in Denver to arrest me on false charges, kept me locked up for weeks. By the time I got out and made it back here, Amelia was gone. He looked past Cole at Amelia. I've been searching for you ever since, trying to make it right. Why should I believe you? Amelia's voice was steady, despite the fear coursing through her. Because I've got this. Thomas pulled a leather pouch from his jacket and held it out. Every dollar Victoria took from you, plus interest. I tracked her down, got it back. It's all here. Amelia stared at the pouch. How did you? Victoria bragged about it. Told people she'd scared off the mail-order bride by paying off her fiancé to disappear. She laughed about it. Thomas's face was grim. But she made a mistake. She paid me with a bank draft, and when I threatened to expose the fraud, she paid me to go away, said I could keep the money if I never came back. He held out the pouch again. But I couldn't. You deserved better than being abandoned.
So I came to return what's yours." Sheriff Garrett took the pouch and opened it. Inside were bills and coins, a small fortune by frontier standards. "It's real," Garrett confirmed. "At least $2,000 here." Amelia's knees went weak. That was more money than she'd ever seen in her life.
"I don't understand," she whispered.
"Why would you come back? Why would you help me?"
Thomas looked at her with genuine regret. "Because I was supposed to marry you, supposed to give you a fresh start, and instead I let myself be bought off by a woman who wanted you destroyed. I can't undo that, but I can at least make sure you get what you were promised." "The money's not what I was promised," Amelia said quietly. "The fresh start was, and I got that. Just not from you." She took Cole's hand, and Thomas's expression crumpled. "You're married?" "I am. To a man who actually kept his promises." Thomas nodded slowly. "Then I'm glad for you. I really am." He looked at Cole. "Take care of her. She deserves someone who will." "I know," Cole said, and there was no anger in his voice anymore. Just certainty. Thomas started to turn away, but Amelia called out. "Wait!" He stopped. "Thank you for bringing the money back, for trying to make it right." She paused. "That took courage."
"Not as much as what you did, stepping in front of this man's horse and asking for help." Thomas smiled sadly. "You're braver than I ever was. I hope you know that." Then he mounted his horse and rode away, leaving behind a pouch of money and a story that was finally complete. Sheriff Garrett handed Amelia the pouch. "What do you want to do with this?" She looked at Cole, then at the destroyed town around them, then back at Garrett. "Give it to Mrs. Pritchard for the rebuilding. New schoolhouse, new supplies, whatever the town needs." Amelia's voice was firm. "I don't need it. I've got everything I came here for." Mrs. Pritchard gasped. "Mrs. Hawkins, that's too much." "It's not nearly enough for what you've all done for me." Amelia looked around at the faces watching her. "You stood up for me when no one else would. You risked everything to protect me. The least I can do is help rebuild the town that gave me a home." The silence that followed was profound. Then Mrs. Pritchard stepped forward and pulled Amelia into a fierce hug. "Welcome to Redwood Valley, dear. Not as a stranger, not as a refugee, but as family." Around them, people started talking, planning, organizing. The money would go far, maybe far enough to rebuild everything they'd lost. But Amelia wasn't paying attention anymore. She was looking at Cole, who was looking back at her with an expression that made her heart race. "What?" she asked. "Marry me." She laughed. "We're already married." "I know, but we did it wrong the first time. We did it out of desperation and fear and necessity." He took both her hands. "I want to do it right. I want to stand in front of this town and these people and God Himself and tell everyone that I choose you. Not because you needed saving, not because I felt obligated, but because I love you. And I want to spend the rest of my life proving that you made the right choice when you asked me for help." Amelia's eyes filled with tears again.
"Cole, will you marry me, Amelia Hawkins? For real this time?" "Yes." She didn't hesitate. "Yes. Yes. 1,000 times yes." He kissed her again, and this time the cheering was deafening. They rebuilt Redwood Valley over the next 2 months. Every able-bodied person contributed. Men, women, children. They cleared debris, raised new buildings, repaired bridges and roads. The work was backbreaking and endless, but they did it together, as a community, as family. Cole and Amelia worked alongside everyone else, and somewhere in those weeks of shared labor, something extraordinary happened.
The town stopped seeing Cole as the monster and started seeing him as the man he'd always been underneath the reputation. A man who worked harder than anyone, who helped without being asked, who checked on elderly neighbors and taught children how to fix fences, and never once complained about the weight he was carrying. And Amelia became more than the desperate bride who'd begged for help. She became the woman who donated a fortune to rebuild the town, who nursed the sick, who organized supplies, who made everyone laugh even when they were exhausted. They became part of Redwood Valley in a way neither had expected. On the first Sunday after the new church was finished, Mrs. Pritchard made an announcement. "We're having a celebration next week for everyone who helped rebuild, everyone who survived, everyone who makes this town what it is." People cheered. They'd earned a celebration. But what Mrs. Pritchard didn't tell anyone was that the celebration had a second purpose, a purpose only she and Dr. Chen and a handful of others knew about. The day arrived with perfect weather, clear skies, warm sun, the kind of day that felt like a gift. People gathered at the new church, wearing their best clothes, laughing and talking and celebrating life. Amelia stood beside Cole near the back, watching people file in. She was wearing a simple dress, nothing fancy, but clean and pressed and the best she owned. "This is nice," she said. "The town needed this." They did. Cole took her hand. We all did. "Cole?" Mrs. Pritchard appeared beside them. "Could you both come with me for a moment?" They followed her to a small room behind the church. Inside, Dr. Chen was waiting with a genuine smile. "What's going on?" Amelia asked. "You're getting married," Mrs. Pritchard said simply. Amelia blinked. "We are married." "Not like this, you're not." Mrs. Pritchard opened a trunk and pulled out a white dress. "This was my daughter's. She would have wanted you to wear it." The dress was beautiful, simple, elegant, perfect. "Mrs. Pritchard, I can't." "You can, and you will." The older woman's eyes were soft. "You and Cole got married out of necessity. You renewed that commitment out of love. But you never got the wedding you deserved. So we're giving it to you. Today. Right now." Amelia's hands flew to her mouth. "The celebration is for you. Everyone knows. They've been planning it for weeks." Dr. Chen grinned. "Cole knew too. He's been in on it the whole time." Amelia turned to stare at Cole.
"You knew?"
"I suggested it, actually." He smiled sheepishly.
"You gave up everything to come west. The least I could do was give you the wedding you should have had from the start."
She wanted to be angry with him for keeping secrets, but looking at his face, at the love and hope and pure joy written there, she couldn't manage it. "Help me into that dress," she told Mrs. Pritchard. 15 minutes later, Amelia stood at the entrance to the church in a white dress that fit like it was made for her. Her hair was pinned up with wildflowers. Her hands were shaking. Inside, she could hear the entire town waiting. "Ready?" Mrs. Pritchard asked. "I've been ready since the day I stepped in front of his horse," Amelia said. The doors opened, and everyone turned to look. The church was packed. Every pew was full. People stood along the walls. Children sat in the aisles. And at the front, wearing a clean shirt and looking nervous as hell, stood Cole Hawkins. When he saw her, his expression transformed into something so beautiful it made her chest ache. She walked down the aisle slowly, taking in every face. The people who'd doubted her, the people who'd defended her, the people who'd become family when she'd needed it most. When she reached Cole, he took her hands, and she could feel how hard his heart was beating. "Hi," he whispered. "Hi yourself." The preacher, an old man who'd lived through the flood and insisted on officiating despite his bad leg, cleared his throat. "Dearly beloved,
We are gathered here today to witness something extraordinary. Not just a wedding, but a second chance. A new beginning. A promise made not out of fear, but out of love. He looked at Cole and Amelia. These two people came together in darkness and found light. They faced impossible odds and refused to surrender. They taught this town what it means to stand for something. And now, they're going to teach us what it means to love.
He went through the traditional bows, and both Cole and Amelia spoke clearly, their voices steady. But when it came time for Cole to speak his own words, he took a breath and said what he'd been practicing for weeks. Amelia, when you stepped in front of my horse that day, I thought you were the bravest person I'd ever met. And I was right. But you're also the kindest, the strongest, the most stubborn. People laughed. You took a broken man who'd given up on the world and showed him that there was still something worth fighting for. You turned a house into a home, a lie into truth, fear into love, and you did it all while facing down corrupt judges and federal marshals and floods that should have destroyed us. His voice roughened. I don't deserve you, but I'm going to spend every day of the rest of my life trying to be the man you see when you look at me. I love you, and I promise, no matter what comes, we face it together. Amelia was crying openly now.
Cole, I came west looking for someone to save me, but you didn't save me. You gave me the tools to save myself. You taught me to shoot, to stand up for what's right, to believe that I was worth fighting for. And somewhere in all that, you became the person I couldn't imagine living without. She squeezed his hands. I love you, not because you're perfect, but because you're real, because you see me, all of me, and you love me anyway. And I promise that no matter what happens, no matter where life takes us, I'm choosing you. Today, tomorrow, forever. The preacher smiled. Then by the power vested in me by Colorado territory and the grace of God, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Again, he paused. Cole, you may kiss your bride. For real this time. And Cole did. He kissed her like she was oxygen and he'd been suffocating. Like she was light and he'd spent years in darkness. Like she was the answer to every question he'd ever been afraid to ask. The church erupted in cheers and applause and joy so pure it felt like it could lift the roof off the building. When they finally broke apart, both breathless and grinning, Cole whispered, "Thank you." For what? For being brave enough to ask. Because if you hadn't stepped in front of that horse and begged the most feared cowboy in 3 counties for help, I'd still be alone. Still be afraid. Still be the monster they all thought I was. Amelia touched his face. You were never a monster, Cole. You were just a man waiting for someone to see past the story to the truth. And you were that someone. We were that someone for each other. They walked back down the aisle together, not as strangers making a desperate deal, but as partners who'd fought for their love and won. The town poured out after them, and the celebration that followed lasted until sunset. People danced and ate and told stories about the flood and the rebuilding, and the day a desperate woman had asked a feared man for help and changed everything. As the sun set over the newly rebuilt Redwood Valley, Cole and Amelia stood on the church steps and watched their town, their family, celebrate the life they'd all fought so hard to build. Happy? Cole asked. More than I ever thought possible. Amelia leaned against his shoulder. You? I didn't know I could be this happy. She smiled. Good, because you're stuck with me now. Promise? Promise. And in that moment, as the last light of day painted everything gold, and the people they loved surrounded them with warmth and laughter and hope, both Cole and Amelia understood a fundamental truth about their story. It hadn't started with a desperate plea in the middle of Main Street.
It had started the moment they both decided that being alone was worse than being afraid.
That asking for help was braver than suffering in silence. That love, real love, was worth fighting for, even when the odds seemed impossible. Because the woman who'd begged the most feared cowboy in the West to marry her hadn't just saved herself. She'd saved him, too. She'd saved a whole town that had forgotten what it meant to stand together. She'd saved the idea that second chances were possible for anyone brave enough to ask. And Cole Hawkins, the man everyone had feared for 5 long years, had proven that sometimes the people the world calls monsters are just heroes, waiting for someone to believe in them. Together, they'd turned a lie into truth, strangers into family, and a broken frontier town into a place where love mattered more than reputation, where courage meant more than fear, and where 2 people who'd started with nothing but desperation had built a life worth living. They didn't just survive. They thrived. And they taught everyone watching that the bravest thing anyone can do is ask for help, stand up for what's right, and love someone fierce enough to change the world.